Hello, everybody. Green Talk this year, Crossing the Future, the European Diktat on Electrification and the Smart Land Challenge. The fifth edition of this event, which after the pandemic has become a traditional event from the point of view of the yearly event, but very much a laboratory in the making. This year we have tried to talk not only about industry but also about politics, because I believe that never before has the theme of electrification, but in reality of sustainable mobility, of the transformation of mobility in a sustainable sense, become not only an industrial but also social and political subject. We have a very, very interesting morning with people who will certainly open up new chapters of discussion. And we will have 5 sessions, and we have dedicated each one to a particular aspect of this very important issue, which, as we said, is affecting our daily lives, not just the economy. First of all, however, I would like to give the floor to Beatrice Saltini, the chairman of Miglia, for an institutional greeting. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone present, and thanks you to the speakers who will follow for your attention to this initiative of ours. As we said, Green Talk is in its 5th edition, and once again this year it is intended to be a moment of factual, frank exchange to assess, to define, to see the confrontation between companies, universities and research centers, institutions and citizens, moved by a common purpose to stimulate, to promote, to bring forward the change underway, and to outline future scenarios. Sustainability and social responsibility are fundamental elements of our future. The recent events in Romania have brought to our attention how a conscious use of resources, of all resources, is not just an elitist and abstract approach or something that does not affect us directly, but only distant peoples and nations. It is an essential element for our very survival. There is a need for a cultural change that can promote a different way of approaching life, that can promote and change lifestyles, that then determine the development of a different and sustainable economy. So I thank you for everything that you want to give us today, and of course I wish you good luck.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you very much. From Chairman to President Aci Brescia, President Aldo Bonomi, we say that every year when we open the Green Talk, the Miglia is, yes, a classic car race, but in its DNA it carries innovation in its blood, because at the time, 50, 60, 70 years ago, these cars were the future from a technological point of view. Today, looking at the past, we can learn something from the past. At least we're trying to do so.
Hello, everyone. Well, I would say that, as it was said, the 5th edition of Green Talk brings us to look at the past with the future in mind. When we started the Miglia, the first year in 1927, so it's almost 100 years, it was already something extraordinary, an event that looked to the future. It went through Italy during the years. It went really through the whole Italian history of industry, commerce, but also of infrastructure. So it had a great look to the future. But today, in this Green Talk, we are talking about sustainable development, technological neutrality, and it is mainly addressed to the automotive model and all the surroundings. Talking then about green economy, and in any case, circular economy, a possible future scenario for us, but we must look at it with enthusiasm and also with concern. But these are the challenges of our time. Just as we have challenged the future in the past years from 27 onwards, today too we must challenge the future, but with enthusiasm and with a thought of bringing something new and in any case safeguarding our planet. The Automobile Club of Brescia and of course the Miglia are state-owned companies and must pay attention, but not only for this, because even if they were private, they would still pay attention to the future, towards the territories, towards the community. What has just happened now in Emilia-Romagna has now been recalled. So all the more reason we must use this attention. Green Talk is the desire to share reflections and experiences that can improve our future, always thinking of what the past has been. So a wish of openness towards the future. Also, and in any case, a thank you to all the specialists who will come and speak and who will give us an address for the near future. Good day to all.
Thank you, Aldo Bonomi, President of ACI Brescia Confindustria of Dr. Franco Gussali Beretta, is certainly one of the actors of the change. If only because the province of Brescia and Lombardy are, let's say, one of the lungs of the automotive in Italy. What Aldo Bonomi said is interesting. We must look at the future with positivity. I don't think it's easy when there are investments, industrial transformation, social repercussions, including employment at stake.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. Confindustria has always looked at Miglia first and then Green Talk as a great opportunity, because the industry, as was said before, the automotive industry has grown thanks to this great project of Miglia, developed here in Brescia for the whole of Italy. And today I am pleased to remind you that the automotive industry, the automotive components industry in Brescia, still has 250 companies, 18,000 employees, and accounts for 16% of the turnover generated by manufacturing. So it is very important. At this moment, considering the automotive industry, the automotive component industry, Brescia is holding its own, but it has a certain concern for the future. And so it is taking the lead in looking at this absolutely necessary change towards innovation, towards sustainability, criticizing the simplistic ideology that leads one to say, let's go electric, because this is not the solution. Because it has also been demonstrated in the facts there are alternatives to electric mobility. So the automobile industry in Brescia is conducting a constructive debate to understand what the solution for the future really is. And what is the solution for the future? For a certain type of mobility, the electric cars can be. But for many other types of mobility, so for the heavy duty, for example, electric is absolutely not satisfactory. And so also, Lucas Ra, the president of Iveco Truck Business Unit at our last meeting, testified that they're also with the Brescia plant going down the electric road, but not only because it is not sustainable. There is hydrogen, for example. In the latest comparisons at the European Commission, the other solution that has come up is the biofuel idea, which the Brescia automotive industry is again looking at with great attention, because you are beginning to glimpse the various solutions. Electricity for a certain type of mobility and the Brescia automotive industry is making investments this direction, but not only. So what needs to be opposed is a simply ideological approach to a solution. What is needed is the so-called technological neutrality that brings other solutions forward. Biofuels can be one, hydrogen another. I would like to mention as a last point that Brescia will become one of the hydrogen reference points thanks to the Hydrogen Valley project with a hydrogen powered train, but also in the province of Brescia, two electrolyzers for industries have already been approved. And therefore both the Nibuli group and the Lucchini group have had new electrolyzers financed to produce hydrogen. So Brescia industry is absolutely active in looking to the future, but not with the short-sightedness of a single solution, but with the multiplicity of solutions. Thanks to all.
Thank you. Thank you also to Confindustria President Brescia from Franco Gusali Beretta. Thank you all for your greetings and your good wishes for this green talk and also, of course, for the start of the motor race. I'd like to start with the panels first. But we have a little clip that, let's say, that if Dr. Beretta's speech already brought us on a critical side, what are we going to see now puts another load on it.
There's also something to be said about Italy. We no longer have an automotive industry. We are a country, let's say, of production. Fiat is no longer Italian. No. Fiat is French. Fiat is not Italian. Decisions are made in Paris. The CEO is French. Italy has an extraordinary supply chain, for example, of components, and not only that. There is no longer a research center. There is no longer a car design center. There is no electronics industry because there is no longer even Magneti Marelli. It was sold. Yes, it was sold. And we don't only see electronics on cars, we see it in general. It is a major loss for the country. I am concerned in the meantime because most, if not all, of the resources of the Italian car plants have been laid off. I consider the redundancy fund a terrible thing for those who are on it and for the entrepreneur because it's attachment from work, a detachment from the everyday world. On the other hand, it is the only way to safeguard jobs. And I was saying that Italy, at the Brussels table, compared to the French and Germans, who have the best car companies, is very weak today. And I'm worried about the components.
Well, I think that this seems to be rather lucid words from Montezemolo, introducing the first panel session that we have decided to call Comparing Politics and Industry. Can Fit for 55 still be changed? We have 3 Europarlamentaries online. I hope they can hear me. Maria Angela Danzi of Movimento 5 Stelle, Oscar Lancini of Lega, and Patrizia Toia of Partito Democratico. Good day to all 3 of you. I would like to start with Oscar Lancini. We heard Montezemolo's words. The question we ask ourselves is, living in an industrial district as important as that of Brescia and Lombardia, what is happening in Brussels? President Beretta spoke of ideology. How do you see it?
I fully embrace President Beretta's theory, and I'm speaking with full knowledge of the facts because being here, I see directly and personally what is happening. There is no doubt that we must try to change our lifestyle and pay more attention to the environment. We clearly see this every day. Although, to tell the truth, not all scientists think in the same way. For example, we have an Italian meteorological expert, Franco Prodi, who absolutely does not believe in climate change and considers these events to be something that has been repeating itself over time for a long time. And the possible cause of these disasters is man, who has perhaps built in places where he should not have built. But beyond this detail, I agree that we must protect the environment in which we live. Of worlds, we have only one, and this one we have no other. And therefore we must protect it, if not for us, at least for our children, for our grandchildren. Having cleared the field of this initial idea, which clearly does not place me among those who do not believe that nothing should be done, we must, however, enter into the logic of what is happening. Because when we push the automotive industry to go in one direction, which is that of the electric car, and we must also make a whole series of considerations that are linked to the world in which we live today, because it is today, because 2035 means today, it is today that we're pushing our world in that direction. And today in that direction, we are not ready. We are not ready from a technological point of view, because if we look at electric cars, they still have too lower range compared to the needs of ordinary citizens, not to mention heavy transport, where we even risk having a heavier battery than what can be transported. So today technology is not able to meet the needs of the market in the world in which we live. Having said that, there is also another aspect. There are many. I don't know how much time I have. You tell me.
Now, I just wanted to ask you something, Honourable. How much room for change do we have politically in Europe? Is there still room?
No, not with this legislature. What had to be chosen has been chosen. The vote on electric cars has already been taken, and so on electric cars we have no longer a chance, zero possibility. So much so that on the day of the parliamentary voters on the electric car 2035 stop combustion engine, Ford sent a letter to German and British industries announcing 4,000 redundancies. American Ford that builds in Europe, 4,000 redundancies. So there is no going back from there with this parliament.
I was referring to Germany's openness to the fuels, e-fuels, for example. There's also the possibility of, in the roads, in the future years, are there any alternative roads?
There is a small amendment that allows us to check, but you see, even there you have to open a special page, because when we talk about e-fuel, we have to say that to make 1 liter of e-fuel costs 20 euros. That's the economic cost. To make 1 liter of e-fuel in energy terms requires 3 liters of water, which is not exactly environmentally friendly. Whereas Italy has proposed biofuel, which has 0 emissions and 0 energy costs. I don't know what could be more environmentally friendly than that, but this idea has been put on hold for the moment. We still have the hope that we can somehow by now in the Council and no longer in Parliament rediscuss this. We hope so. I see little openness on the part of the committee in this sense, and I do not understand why. I do not understand why, because when the committee in the past pushed us to make biomethane, biogas through digesters and financed us, what sense does it then make to say biomethane cannot be used? We do not like it. Biofuel is not good. These are contradictions that come from the European community that I honestly find hard to understand, except to understand that, to imagine that obviously, as in all things, in addition to the environment, there are important economic interests that push us in one direction rather than another.
Thank you, Honourable.
This is my opinion.
Thank you, Honourable. Maria Angela Danzi, how do you see it?
I see it that we have a bit of a denialist attitude to problems. I always believe that there's room for improvement if we do not deny that there are needs. To hear people say that the problem of climate change doesn't exist is an insult to intelligence, to the thousands of deaths and damage to businesses that we witness every day. Now, let's leave aside for a moment the talk of energies and the subject we're discussing today, but I ask myself, are investments in this sector for hydrogeological instability necessary or not? Is it really plausible that in May what is happening in Emilia-Romagna could happen? Is it possible that we have to appoint a, a drought commissioner because climate change has brought what it has brought? I think that we should realize that there is a need, after which the spaces and our capacity for proposal interlocution, which there are, in my opinion.
Honorable, but isn't that privilege, perhaps Italy, from the point of view, has been a little weak in counter-proposing an alternative?
Perfectly convinced that Italy, especially in this last period, instead of putting forward concrete proposals, every day presents denialist proposals. I tell you that no, Lancini, stop. I have an extraordinary dialectical working relationship with Lancini.
Yes. I ask you not to argue because it's not a political panel.
I see him working and intervening, but in recent weeks I have seen proposals coming from the government that have caused hard positions. In committees where Oscar and I work, I say mainly me and Oscar because many are absent, and this is one of the conditions that penalizes Italy, because in committees where Italian parliamentaries should be present, such as an environment and health committee where we are present, there are very few people who are present and work on the points day after day, hour after hour. Let's start by establishing this. Not all Italian parliamentaries, in the work that the committee asks of us every day, are present in working with zeal and capacity for intelligent proposals. So the first problem Italy has is that not all parliamentaries are always present as they should be. I am honored to be here this morning with Patrizia Toia and Lancini, because the other parliamentarians I always meet at all hours of the day and night. So, for the first thing I ask of the Italian parliamentarians is to be present as these people who are here online today.
Okay, thank you today. Thank you. Okay, thank you for joining us. I'd like to speak to you, the Democratic Party. Please tell us your position regarding the vote that was taken Fit for 55. I ask because obviously the echo from Brussels to Italy often and willingly, and I put myself in the first person as a journalist, risks either simplifying the situation or even distorting it. There wasn't just one vote. The issue is more complicated. Can you help us a little to clarify?
Let's say that the Fit for 55 package, which dictates rules in various fields that affect the world of industry and therefore has had special attention, and let's say the reforms also introduce, for example, an obligation that is extended to new sectors to pay with the quotas of the emissions of CO2 in the atmosphere. Sectors that were previously exempt will also gradually reduce the free quotas. However, introducing the CBAM, the tax that will be made to pay for the import of, for example, steel, which comes from countries where there is not the same legislation as ours, that is not so strict. And therefore, a fairer market should be created for our producers, and so they are helped to win this competition. I have only mentioned these two aspects, but there are other points to say that it certainly dictates stricter rules than in the past. The reason for this, strengthening of environmental protection measures, and therefore the call also in the productive industrial world, the world of transport, because the world of shipping and aviation will also be involved. This whole world, let's say, of service production is called upon to make its contribution to the well-known climate change that I believe is a very shared objective. Then the gradualness of the implementation may be different, but in short, to deny that today there is a need to go in this direction is to deny reality, because I do not want to cite the facts of these days that are so painful. But in general, what we are witnessing makes us realize that I don't want to be told that Europe only contributes 9% of the world's emissions, so why does it have to be top of the class? But Europe has an ambition. We will see if we will win it or not, so we can fight climate change, strengthen our environmental measures, and at the same time maintain a position of innovation, of industrial competitiveness.
Right, about this, Honourable, you talk about innovation and competitivity. That is, the serious risk, however, is to move the mobility business elsewhere. We all know that we, for example, do not have real factories for electric engines, especially for batteries. Aren't we hindering ourselves?
No, I don't think so. It's a challenge. It doesn't mean we will manage. But this goal, I am from the Industry Committee. My colleagues are from the Environment Committee. But we always work together. But there are also somewhat different points of view. So that sometimes I, as the Industry Committee, even in Fit for 55, we have tried a certain approach to the environment, had a stricter one. And in the end, the Parliament in the Chamber came back after its parliamentary incident on the position of the Industry Committee. So it means non-personal. It means that our line is trying to keep this compatibility. But in a word, using the example of batteries and electric mobility, why does Europe think that the committee, the Parliament, for a large majority of the Parliament, think that we can win the climate change and industrial change together? Because we have to move forward. It's true what you said about Ford, but it's also true that the European industry is already on electric production, and it means that the challenge with China is not irretrievably lost. We can't just stick to a production vision that is a little bit in the past, or at least in the current situation. This will cut us out from future markets. Of course, it is not enough to say that we must focus there. We must accompany this with measures, and to say the batteries. Europe has made 2 alliances that it made in the past that was less active. Today it has set up, which means a few years ago, an alliance for batteries in which the industry, which calls industry research and all the stakeholders to do innovative research to see if we are able to have a technology for these batteries, storage capacity, and then also take care of the industrial aspect. Some settlement for battery factories, the important ones that are emerging in Europe. And now Europe, if it carries out well the theme zero net industry, which is industrial policy to accompany the companies that also have to bet a little bit, because in short, it takes a little bit of entrepreneurial capacity to bet on these technologies of the future and these products with advanced technologies. And if with the Raw Material Act, which is another measure that we're discussing in the Environment Committee and Industry Committee, to become a little less dependent for those raw materials that are also used for the production of batteries, we also managed to be present in this world's market of electric cars. I know it's not easy. I know it's a gamble. It would also be necessary for there to be a European policy to work alongside the national ones and together work in this direction, because the position of this whole continent is at stake here. It's not just the industry in Italy or other countries. I think this is a challenge we can try to win with realism by putting the tools in place. We have large research funds that we should commit them to more in this direction. Can Europe cut itself off from the research and production of these new technologies? I think not. We will not even win the environmental challenge without the challenge of appropriate technologies. So even the business world, which rightly has difficulties and asks for tools, should be helped and accompanied to win this challenge together, or to try to win it. I think that on the other hand, on cars, you have said that in 2 or 3 years there's a review. We will see if we really go down that road. But I'd rather say no. What are the tools that are needed to achieve this goal? This is the position of my group.
Lancini, in a few words, at this point, should we start working together or at least try to put two or three counter proposals on the table?
Yes, first of all, we find the counter proposals, then we change, in my opinion, because if we take a leap in the dark, it becomes a bit problematic. Companies need to plan their investments. You can't expect them to change overnight. Companies make investments that last 10 or 15 years, not 3 months or 2 or 3 years. So in my opinion, this aspect has been somewhat neglected, let's say. And then, from my modest point of view, I'm a politician. If you will allow me to say, even if I don't fully believe it, I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm not an industrialist. If I have to make a choice that affects that sector, I ask for the cooperation from the industrialist and the productive world. I don't impose a political choice that the entire productive world is telling me to be careful because we're taking a leap in the dark and we don't know where we'll end up.
A little bit like what happened in Germany.
We don't have the electricity distribution networks to meet the needs we would have if we all decided tomorrow, let's be good. We have money to throw around, let's buy an electric car.
Okay, Honorable Dancy.
We don't have clean electricity to do this. But even if the electricity, excuse me for finishing the concept, if then the electricity that we have is that which comes to me from coal-fired power stations, can you understand that it is useless for me to change my car, that my electric car and emission zero?
We are moving the problem. We're only localizing the problem. Thank you. The Movimento 5 Stelle, since when it was formed, has always been a champion, let's say, of the carbon zero model. In any case, the decisive push for the production of energy for renewable sources. Yet, if we look at what is happening in Europe, it seems to me that Germany and France, for example, believe much more than we do in the production of this green hydrogen, for example. How do you explain the mismatch between the possibilities that we have, considering solar and hydroelectrical power, and the things that we're actually doing in Italy?
The problem is that it has to be done in Italy. The financial instruments are all there. I read an article in the Sole 24 Ore of the 21st of March 2023, where the European measures for the whole package foresee a potential positive effect by 2030 in terms of revenue for the Italian state and an estimate of avoided costs of 595 billion. Now I ask myself, why we do not go in the direction of using renewable energy sources? We have renewable energy sources. We have the sun, we have the wind. We had to negotiate 10 days ago a stance taken by the Sicilian region that in the face of a European regulation simplifying access to the photovoltaic system and hence the simplification of procedures, the president of the Sicilian region announced that he would take regulatory measures to block the implementation of this powerful innovation. Yet we know that Sicily is one of the regions that can give so much in terms of renewable energy production. And some of us believe that it is a brake on Italy's overall development because of its economic condition.
Okay, Patrizia Toia, what Dancy is saying is,
I say and maintain, let us go in the right direction and then we'll find the solutions. But why don't we exploit what we have and deny the evidence, the necessity? So the mismatch is not there because other countries are making these investments. Anyway, Germany is already investing in batteries. We, on the other hand, deny the evidence. So, for example, we have done the measures that go into the trilogue regarding the efficiency of buildings. We have only made propaganda claiming that No one can sell or rent a house that is not energy efficient. And the proposals that came out at the same time that can be improved, nobody says this. The measures say that the country must make available funds that are there and we're not able to spend to help weaker families, to make the housing more efficient and spend less, or to heat their homes, because we have a child out of 8 who cannot heat his home.
Honorable, unfortunately, I have to ask you to close because we have a panel.
And so in closing, I say the measures are improvable. People like us work in Industry Commission and Environment Commission trying to make these measures sustainable. And moments of confrontation should be on how we expect concrete proposals on where to go and what improving proposals we can make, and not anything else. Let's not deny the needs that there are, but above all, let's work one day on how to spend all the money we have available that can, in any case, get us out of the energy dependency we have experienced.
Honorable Toya, in a minute. One of the numbers that goes around and that has as its goal to be able to somehow start thinking about the stability of the production of green energy is to reach these 70 gigawatts of green production capacity. What Dancy was saying is the money is there. You just have to believe it. What do you say? Can you reach this goal?
I say that in order to reach that 70 annual production, we will have to hurry because we have only a few years left to reach it for a 2030 forecast. We absolutely have to shorten the authorization times, and also involve local realities, because you can't say no, not at my house.
And also because we are famous for the NIMBY syndrome,
Exactly, not in my backyard. But especially the length of administration procedures for new plants, but also for innovating and expanding existing ones. This is something that Europe is also taking an interest in. We cannot give binding and time frames for the member states, but we're pushing in this direction, saying there's a common European interest, then in the common sense European interest in this kind of realization. Thank you very much, Mariangela Dancy, Oscar Lancini, and Patrizia Toia for being with us, and above all, thank you and good luck with your work there in Brussels. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And now we continue. We have closed the first political session. Let's make a table change. Obviously, I thank the 3 chairmen and presidents who have kept me company during this first panel. Thank you very much indeed. We now move from politics to industry, and I invite Antonio Di Gioia, who is the Business Development and Sales of A2A Mobility. Hello, Antonio, thank you. Please have a seat. And Roberto Vavassori, who is the Chief Public Affairs and Institutional Relations Officer of Brembo, and also a member of the General Council of ANFIA. Dr. Vavassori, hello. Welcome back. So, we tried to start this talk in a slightly different way than the previous years, trying to get politics talking first to understand where we stand. I would like to ask you, Vavassori, who also represents the entrance of ANFIA. What do you think? Was Italy's approach in Brussels, was it too weak?
Hello, everybody. No, it was not weak. It was consistent with what our governments constantly expressed in the 3 votes that then led to the Fit for 55. So we must first reflect on how we have dialogued with our government, and then the position that our government has held in the European Council. Of course, the 3 important bodies in Europe, we know are the Commission on the one hand, the Europarliament and the Council. So as far as the Commission is concerned, it is clear that the disconnected form that can be felt between a Director General, DG, the Director General, ENVI, that Environmental Director General, which legislates the example of, for example, this Euro 7. This type of non-dialogue is extremely harmful and dangerous for the interests of European citizens. In the end, because citizens are citizens who breathe and want to breathe clean air, but also they want to have job
In
opportunities and
Europe,
mobility.
with your colleagues, have you not managed to build, let's say, an unambiguous view on neutrality, on the concept of neutrality? Have you not yet succeeded?
In my years of frequenting Brussels, I have understood two things among others. I've understood very little, but two things at least. One, there is no bad Europe, no Europe Moloch, no dragon to slay. Europe is simply a very beautiful but very laborious synthesis between first 28 states, now 27, each with its own market interest. So it's a continuous negotiation, sometimes downwards, because if I give up something on mobility, maybe I need it for fishing rights in the English Channel between France and other states. We have to enter into very different logic. Certainly a cohesion of Euro parliamentarians, our patrol of over 70 representatives, should increasingly, when national interests are taken, forget the party logistics a little and put up a united front. We are very important here, but sometimes we are very fragmented. But why? Because we do not manage to synthesize. This is something
Antonio Di
fundamental.
Gioia, one of the themes that both Lancini and then Toia mentioned is the fact that, okay, you can also invest in transition, you can invest in electrification of mobility, but you need a conditio sine qua non, that of being able to have energy independence and respond to a growing need. From this point of view, A2A is in the game.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. In the meantime, and thank you for the invitation, A2A is a group obviously very, let's say, focused on this. We presented a couple of years ago an industrial plan of 18 billion in investments divided precisely among two lines, which are energy transition and circular economy. So obviously mobility is a very important part of this industrial, but it's not the only one, obviously. We must learn to exploit what our country already has today compared to others, in particular sun and wind. And then, of course, we also have for many years the hydroelectric power plant and so on. So, in short, we must make a qualitative leap forward simply in the ability to exploit what energy sources that we have already have naturally more than other countries in the European landscape. And on the other hand, we must learn to do a lot on the other front, which is circular economy. For example, the reuse of waste to produce energy. Earlier we were speaking about the fundamental issue that we need to pay attention to, which is batteries. So, each car which enters, which is not maybe produced here, must have a second life. So once a battery enters, we must give an Italian passport and no longer leave this country.
Well, after all, the Italian industry has always grown and prospered in the economy of scarcity. We saw this at the beginning of the industrial epic of the 1950s with, for example, the iron and steel industry. If we imagine there is a network system, if we imagine a smart city, a city that in some way is hyper-connected, interconnected, with the capacity to move goods and people without creating CO2, we need stable networks that are also capillary.
Absolutely, yes. Of the networks, and particularly distribution network, which is also an issue that we are obviously dealing with in an important way, also because in our main two cities, Milan and Brescia, we're also distributors. It's a fundamental issue, for example. In Milan, this industrial plan provides for an investment of 1 billion for the construction of a very large number of primary substations on the one hand, and therefore investments to increase capacity, because we all know that in the past, unfortunately, there have been some problems in past summers, let's say in terms of network resilience. On the other hand, to make the intelligence and therefore absolute use technology to make these networks capable of responding quickly to changes and requests coming from industry, from homes, from consumption in general. And then, on the other hand, the ability, even with these new fronts that are advancing, for example, mobility, to install infrastructures that have an intelligent consumption of energy so that cars can be recharged when they are needed. And therefore, by balancing the network, all the themes of vehicle to grid should start from here. Cars that in turn become batteries that, when necessary, become carriers instead of recovering. In short, there's a lot that A2A wants to be an important player.
Speaking about companies, Roberto Vavassori, you at Brembo have been investing in change for years. You have made specific products. The number that Aldo Bonomi and also Gusali Beretta introduced earlier, 18,000 people in the province of Brescia alone who work in the automotive sector, more than 50,000 in the Lombardy region. There is a concern for these people that they may somehow find an alternative to a production that will certainly change, and therefore it is also a question that will change and touch the industrial districts?
Certainly, yes. The timeline is always important. However, because while in the short term we run this real risk, especially for that third of our production workers who are more tied to the endothermic engine, transmission, exhaust and power supply, if we go a little further down the timeline, not so much, maybe perhaps less than 10 years, we will begin to have a demographic issue. But many companies are already experiencing this today, a shortage of people entering our industry. So we must be careful. And that's not easy to talk about complex issues. So when you hear some tribal debates between a tribe of one kind and a tribe of another resolved with a tweet, it's really a great pity, because that's not the way to deal with issues that involve our life, but our life of the world and the planet. So yes, there are very important issues that will probably be highlighted later by President of the Lombardy Mobility Cluster. However, I believe that in this session it is useful to change this perspective of how we see mobility a little less. In the end, mobility is just a subsector of the large topic of energy. For a century and a bit, we have used fossils to get around. We've used fossil fuels to power our businesses, to heat our homes, or to cook our food. So we have to enter into a logic whereby it's not that mobility is abstract in relation to something. Mobility is simply used energy, full stop. When the energy choice is, let's abandon fossils, let's go towards other different sources, mobility also follows this logic. We have to enter into just such a paradigm shift. Now, however, we come before products. Excuse me if I take a moment, but it seems interesting. Before products, we talk about processes. And then I note that in our company, in our group, we can only directly affect 20% of our emissions. Yet we have foundries, we have, how to say, a very energy-intense process. And on that, we have to be very clear. A decarbonization map, because all our automotive customers have asked us by 2040 to be carbon neutral.
What you're saying is that we need a broadening of the supply chain.
Of course, a broadening of vision, because 80% of what we emit, 80%, 79 to be precise, worldwide, and look, that's a lot of tons, because last year the balance sheet is public, sustainability one. It was 1.4 million tons of CO2, despite the fact that we already use more than 2/3 of our green renewable energy in Italy, in Mexico, The real issue is where is the clean energy that 80% of us need to carbonize? At the end of the day, this is the issue. Before we even talk about the products with 4 wheels or 2 wheels that we will go on the road. So with this horizon, we have to, that we've given ourselves, it's clear that it's no time and no excuse to say it's your fault, it's your fault. We must all work with extreme openness and intellectual honesty. And here, technology neutrality is fundamental because everything will be needed. It's not enough solar is not enough when we can put it on the ground in our territories. Because it's pointless to legislate in Brussels if we struggle to put in on the latest generation of panels rather than on solar panels. So there's need to be very important connection, because otherwise we don't come out. But we don't come out as mobility, we don't come out as industry. 80% is either energy that we buy or energy incorporated into your products of our suppliers, full stop. So the question is, where by 2040 will we, Europe, and then the world have this year in energy? It's clear that the virtuosity somewhat imposed by Europe in a specific, perhaps somewhat ideological way, is a small piece, a small fraction, but itself certainly does not solve the world's problems. So we have to look at ourselves in the face and say, but is this holistic legislation in the competitive sense that can make Europe competitive with the Asian giant and the North American giant? Today I have serious doubts.
So from this point of view, we have also carved out for ourselves as Europe the role of the great censor. This is not only from the point of view of mobility. For example, we also think positively about the laws on, for example, copyright or social media.
As a great pro-European, I have been saying for months to Brussels and to all those I meet, but also to our MPs who are connected earlier, time out. It's time to stop for a moment. In Europe, we have been prey for some time now to the regulatory bulimia. Just think of recycle, reuse, ISGs, and therefore financial and non-financial reporting and sustainability for small companies. CBARN, this border tax that has been applied on raw materials makes us even less competitive because Europe has no raw materials. So it has to be applied on finished products, not on raw materials that we import. If we put a tax on carbon, there too we are finished. The Euro 7, the Fit for 55, these are in the Digital Act. We are in the grip of how to say, a regulatory mania. Instead, we should be doing much more research and development, making supply chains to be competitive, to address the problems today. We are regulating them, and it's a little bit, let's say,
as a pro-European, I also say that it is still a financial issue. I give the example that I always give related to the research of cybersecurity and as computing. Europe has put 10 billion in 10 years. Google puts 32 billion a year. So let's say that we also have a problem of where we allocate our finances. Antonio Di Gioia, the issue of sustainable mobility is not just an energy issue. It is also a product issue. I mean, an example that was given to me and that I think is very evocative is, does it make sense in 2023 to go and move 1,500 kilograms of a car, whether it is hydrogen, petrol, electric, or by sales, it doesn't matter, to go, for example, to the supermarket and buy 70, 80 kilograms of product, when perhaps we could in some way reorganize one of the parts of the logistics that has perhaps been less touched and least innovated in recent years, namely the last mile. And I ask this of you of A2A because you are the players that precisely in the smart city you can have your say. You have huge multipliers of innovation. For example, from this point of view, there are already experiments being carried out in Silicon Valley. In other words, how do you see the smart city of the future? Especially in a medium-sized city such as Brescia or Milan, for example, we're not talking about megalopolises.
So we see it in a way that is very consistent with this, in the sense that I agree with what is being said, because there are already some areas where we can already take action, take sustainable mobility. I give this example and expand it in a bit. Let's take, um, for example, a city such as Milan, but also Rome and Brescia. In short, many cities where there are already barriers or constraints, no entry. For example, from regulatory point of view, such as Area C, Area B, and so on. And already today, the first piece that can be pushed to convert to precisely logistics from the last mile, because these vehicles that have a limited range of action in the city, so they're already perfect for electric mobility from today, already average 300, 350 real, average market cars, without thinking of a supercar, make them. And extending the concept to the smart city of the future, the cars will certainly have certain characteristics. They will be electric, they will be interconnected. Interconnected doesn't mean just between each other, but it means interconnected with traffic lights, it means interconnected with pedestrians.
They will produce and transfer data.
Energy. And the most important thing about this is that in addition to being sustainable, they will have to be less. Because this is the fundamental issue. In the future, they will have to be shared and they will have to be less. So that is to say, the mobility of the future will be the certainty of intermobility for so the concept is today we have to get away from the idea that you need one vehicle. The mobility
From
future,
the project to the service.
from A to B. Exactly. I have to go in 2 points, and there will be several means by getting to point B. It's not strictly necessary that today this passage is to take place in the
So there's intermodal model, very light and super flexible. Perfect, gentlemen. I thank you. You were very, really, very, very interesting. You have both brought us extremely valuable insight. Thank you. Thank you much, Antonio Di Gioia and Roberto Vavassori. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Wait. Thank you. And let's open the third section, because it's true that it's the right to talk about innovation, technology, but it's no technology without education, without humanities. I invite on the stage Giuseppe Colosio, who is the director of RMBs, Saverio Gabuardi, Lombardy Mobility Cluster, Stefano Guerra, Corporate Quality Directory and Strategy Deployment Manager of Streparava. Thank you, Stefano, and Davide Zucchetti, Education Manager of Randstad. Thank you. Thank you for being here. A physically complete panel, this one. We have decided to call this panel The Age of Knowledge. Universities and ITSs to respond to change. A few days ago, it was in Padua. I was in Padua for a festival linked to innovation, to science. But there were lots of very interesting companies, many sectors. There wasn't, let's say, a whole Veneto panel, so from automotive to the wood furniture chain to food processing. The interesting thing was that everyone was not talking about technology, but talking about training. We could say, and I start with Giuseppe Colosio, we could say that training, human knowledge in the area of artificial intelligence, the area of connected industry, knowledge in our new gold is our new oil, our new gold.
Absolutely, yes. Knowledge and skills are truly the engine of economic development, and this must be how it is. At all levels, we register the difficulty of finding these skills, this knowledge that is appropriate to the levels of technological development and quality of life that we now have.
Today, Director ITS, the technical institution, the RMB, you have a career for schools as a teacher, and then as a professor, and then as a headmaster, after which you were the director of the headmasters, let's say. what is now called the Director General. What is needed today to somehow govern this change that is imposed on us from Brussels, but is actually in our group? We can't pretend nothing is happening now. We are in it.
We need a profound maintenance of the entire education system of education. Unfortunately, the Italian school system is somewhat stuck in the 19th century from the point of view of models, whereas today we need a fundamental change at all levels in terms of methodologies, content, and even the customization of processes. My experience now shows that all companies, but not only the industrial ones, really demand these skills, and the problem today is the difficulty in finding these skills.
Afterwards, can you tell us more about your ITS experience? Because, in my opinion, it's
an interesting case.
It's an interesting case. Saverio Gabuardi, can you explain to us what kind of skills will be needed in the transition, considering the fact that we still believe there is a possibility for all types of industries in the automotive sector, that there is not just what we were saying about the European diktat on electrification. There's still a possibility to produce, maybe not for European markets.
Also for the European market, as we believe there is a chance to convince the European legislator in this last mile before Fit for 55 becomes a legislative instrument to add to the currently approved fuels other zero-emission fuels in which Italy is particularly advanced, to add biomethane, to add hydrogenated vegetable oils alongside, of course, electric, hydrogen, and e-fuels, which Germany wanted and obtained. So we are at a step on which to insist. And then it would allow us to maintain energy development in Europe. Then we start where we want to go. If, on the other hand, we zero out engines in Europe, we'll have to close our research centers, and we will very difficultly rebuild them in Brazil. Instead, the model is to say we will make fewer engines, but we'll maintain development. Having this knowledge of development, we can produce in Brazil or anywhere. The alternative does not exist. So Roberto Vavassori said it earlier. We are committed to the Lombardo Manifesto of Renewable Fuels, strongly supported by Guido Guidesi, which split Parliament in two. We had gone from 100 to 100, ended up with 321 to 300, with a few votes that could have made a difference. We are confident that between now and October, we will succeed. We will insist that even fuels other than those currently approved are...
And so, at this point, the puzzle becomes more complicated, because somehow our companies will have to continue doing what they are doing, maybe better, but at the same time, invest in the new.
This is the challenge. Continuing to do our own production allows us to have the margins to enter new technologies. The alternative doesn't exist. If we stop making endothermic engines, endothermic vehicles, we do not have the resources, the margins to invest in new technologies. We must realize that at this moment in Europe, in Italy, there is no specific fund for this transaction. Yes, we can go a bit into the PNR or something else, but funding for complete company restructuring plans is not there. Let's talk about a number. We have assessed in Lombardy what the cost of this transformation would be. In Lombardy, we have 50,000 people in the industrial part. Well, 1/3 of these 50,000 would lose their jobs, or in the optimistic approach phase, would have to change product and technology. Let's make out of 50,000, 18,000. They work 2 shifts. That's 9,000 jobs. I'm low in my assessment. That's 9 million plus reconditioning, reclassification, another year's work. We also have a major investment to make in the whole population, in digital languages, and in robotics. The estimate we have made of this The spin-off at European level of this type is a project of 12 billion to 50 billion in Italy, multiplied by 8 at the European level. The awareness of this value is not there. I suspect that they simply give us the money to send people home, after which we have lost people and we've also lost a productive base.
There is therefore a great risk of losing important know-how. Montezemolo also said this at the beginning.
You got it right. 18,000 jobs are at risk, but we are going to lose the most important part of our competitiveness at world level, because this Fit for 55 choice that isolates our continent from North America and China is still to be understood. We can stay in the engine world, which will make our other countries, if we maintain the capacity for development in Europe.
Then we'll get back to this point. Yes, of course.
Then I'll talk about competence. Yes. The phenomenon has already been said is complex. Let's say it has to be interpreted in terms of quantity and in terms of content. In terms of quantity, I've already said what I think. 18,000 people will hopefully change product and process with economic commitment. I've said that. Another 1/3 who are only slightly modified will change process. And all 50,000 will have to be trained in the languages, I will say, for simplicity's sake, of digital robotics. Let's see what the contents are. I will limit myself only to the essential steps. All staff in our companies will be affected by the change, but this is nothing new.
The automotive industry has changed in the 60s, then in the 70s, and in the 80s.
Ever since Peter Drucker baptized us as the industry of industries, we have faced many revolutions, and therefore we are the essential passage of innovation, and technologies are created in space and defense, and then they move from us, and they go to the refrigerators, the washing machines, so no country can lose the automotive. It is only us in Europe who have decided to do this. Everyone is invested by the managerial entrepreneurial level, which I would assign the task of aggregating all those who work in the company's destiny, in the company's success. And at the executive level, we were no longer simply asked to perform a task, we also asked to improve the work in execution, with proposals, with involvement. So this brings us to the topic of relationships, which insiders call the soft skills, both collective and individual. At a collective level, in the relationship indicated by the company, that must be based on trust and mutual responsibility, avoiding conflict up to itself when possible. On individual level, respecting the person, valuing the person, making an exchange with the person. I involve you and you grow with me, and you become yourself competitive. Let's say this is the general scheme. If you want us to talk about trades, the first important thing is to keep in place the things we know how to do now, because the shortage of turners, millers, numerical control operators is evident. We cannot find them. To graft new specializations onto these. A good example in Italy are the ITS.
Okay, we'll speak about this later on.
They've struggled to put them together, and now they have been understood, and funding is also coming. It is a pity that they're always very complex, bureaucratic, foundations have to be made. In Germany, they are simple. They exist, they are structural. Therefore, the model that we mean, when we mean it, is always the German model of current training. We trudge along because bureaucracy is what it is.
But something has moved. I'll get back to this to you, Gabuardi. Davide Zucchetti, concerning Gabuardi's speech on skills, from your point of view, you are invaluable to us right now because you deal with cross-referencing offending questions. What is missing? What's on the other side, on the other hand of...
Thank you. The question is very interesting and very broad. The theme of skills as a central theme has already been mentioned, is central to the entire company population, therefore not only to young people, but also, indeed, perhaps with even greater urgency, to the populations already present in the company that need to be retrained, up to date, in which continuous investments in terms of renewal and growth of skills is important. If we focus on the younger population, which is the one I work with every day, the issue of skills is a central issue, not only of technical skills, even if those obviously change radically. So we are talking about new professions, new skills, of a change that is continuous, therefore which is the new normality. Therefore we must not only equip ourselves to respond to a change, but equip ourselves to stay within the change, because change is a continuous change. Therefore this involves continuous renewals of the skills frameworks, techniques, and the need to invest, to work a lot both on transversal skills or soft skills, as has already been said, therefore on people's ability to interact with the dynamics of change or with complexity, with greater awareness of their role, within also within the corporate organization. On the other hand, if we look at it with a more macro lens, it is, my opinion, essential to work more and more in terms of ecosystems, where the company is not, and the organization is not the only one responsible for growth, development of skills, but can know that it can rely on and be able to deal with a wider system of actors and training agencies. The ITS are a very interesting example in this perspective, both for, I say it in a wrong way, to go looking for and find the people you need, and therefore the skills you need, but increasingly also in a logic of going to look for new points of view on the market, new insights in an open innovation logic, for which the education and training system is no longer just a basin from which to draw, or let's say from which to provide indications on what the profiles more in focus are at the moment, but in my opinion it must increasingly become a constant interlocutor, not only for the part of talent acquisition, if you want to call it that way, but also and increasingly in terms of exchanges and access to new points of view and new insights.
What level of awareness is there, what you're saying, on the company side, but also on the candidate side?
It is very variable. Our challenge together with our partners, with whom we then move on the various actions, also in another very strategic central framework, which is that of orientation, is increasingly this. Therefore, we try to respond to the challenge, which is to provide and transfer to girls and boys elements of awareness that can support them in their choices towards the job market, and on the other hand, work a great deal instead with our reference company interlocutors so that they can too speak and agree to review the paradigms and therefore to place themselves on the labor market, no longer in a logic of supply and demand, but in a logic of exchange attractiveness. There are various researchers. We are the promoters of one in particular which highlights how above all the younger generation, starting from the Generation Z, moves towards the world of work with completely different motivational levers from those of the previous generation, which are that lead today young boys and girls to choose an employer or to find a more attractive employer, more attractive, more interesting than others. It therefore becomes essential for the organization of the company to listen, understand these dynamics, and position itself more attractively towards this generation.
Stefano Guerra, I kept you for last because I wanted to be clear about the panel and the horizon in which you're moving at this moment. From this point of view, Streparava is not just an automotive group. It's also a group that has invested heavily in what is now called e-manufacturing and has done so not only to substantially improve productivity, it's also done to trigger a virtuous circle in the construction of talents. Is that so? Is that how it went?
Absolutely, yes. Hello, everybody. Yes, we initially invested in e-manufacturing, but then to continue the discussion on skills, we invested a lot in the in-office. So I refer to all my colleagues. We have tried to make the company attractive. We have tried to make the workplace a place where people want to stay, and even by word of mouth to attract talent. I'm convinced that what we usually look for are first and foremost soft skills, because we can probably grow hard skills directly in the company. These are technical skills that we can teach, while the softer skills must come directly from the person.
Soft skills, ability to build team, to listen,
ability to work in a team, ability to accept changes, ability to see beyond the single task. And for this reason, I mentioned in office, we have done a long job of changing our mentality, even in the behaviors we adopt on a daily business in the company, and encourage change, to encourage an approach to improvement, to encourage teamwork and well-being in the company. All these concepts are the result of a work that is never finished. First of all, because it starts one day and never ends. We are seeing the first results, but we started working very strongly since 2016.
involving people in the change. I think it's a great challenge, which, however, also brings a reverse side of the coin, and that is to increase tension and increase responsibility. This is also challenged trying to somehow actively involve every day at any hierarchical level of the organization.
It is a challenge that we have taken on in full, and our people are first and foremost involved in the company strategy. If you share the vision, then where do you want to go? Probably the whole group, except a small physiological part, will help to reach the summit. On the other hand, I say, why not? If you didn't want, what is the other side of the coin? Like saying, we don't train people because you never know, maybe they might leave us. Yes, but this, what is the risk of not training them? It's even greater than that of training them.
We'll come back to this because this is something which really fascinates me. Giuseppe Colosio, let's go back to hard skills, to the practice. Can you tell us what you have done at RMB? And I ask you this because we are all saying that the technological institutes are useful, but unfortunately, and Dr. Guardi also said so, they still have a debt of communication or perhaps of appeal.
Yes, this is an ITS, a technical institute that I would say is a bit quirky compared to the standard ones. What does it come from? The RMB of Polpenazze receives 800,000 tons of scrap per year, mainly in the form of car parcels, but also the ashes from the Italian incinerators.
Even exhausted coffee waste I discovered.
Including coffee, the aluminium pods. Of these 800,000 tons per year, which are a mountain when you think about it, 640,000 tons return to the original state. Therefore, 80% becomes truly circular in the truest sense.
This is interesting data.
It returns to its origins in the form of metals of all kinds, iron, aluminium, copper, etc., in the form of a compostable part, fuel for steelworks, and partly also substances for enrichment of cements. Therefore, a very remarkable process. Aware that in order to do all this work, a complex organization is needed, RMB has decided to invest significantly to create this higher technical institute. Among other things, it is the second edition, the second two-year period of a model, among other things, that we had at its time test with Feralpi, even before there was a talk of a higher technical institute. Also because here there is a need to train a plurality of skills. Therefore, not only soft skills, but also hard skills. Therefore, mechanical, maintenance, chemical, information technology, logistics, etc., etc. You imagine the fact that this amount of material goes around in a company, what it means, hence the importance of investing. And we found it necessary to do it in a way with a course directly held in the company, naturally within the regional framework.
But inside there is a trick of why it's so appealing.
Obviously, this course has become interesting for the participants because the company has decided to pay these students from day one with a net fee of 1,400 euros per month for 14 months, with all the participation of young people in the company's benefits. Naturally, with a permanent hiring in higher education apprenticeship, and with I would not say not only their commitment, but the need to hire these students after they have taken the final exam.
In the first 2 years, how many people participated? How many people then took the exam? And then how many people remained in the company?
The first year, there were 25 young people. And in the end, someone withdrew in the early stages. 20 remained. And the company hired them all. 2 resigned because they then preferred to continue with university.
Therefore, an investment that had its impact on the company.
It had a major impact. In fact, the reflection to do is that why does the company invest a financial share? I would say that it goes far beyond the regional contribution. And what could be the revenue? Because obviously, if it had taken students from other higher technical institutes, it would still have had to train them and invest in training. Instead, the company's idea is, I need these students to enter the departments directly at the end of the 2-year course.
In your opinion, is it replicated in other realities, or is it really the result of this experience?
This is certainly the result of experience. However, I believe that most companies or networks of companies of the same type can do this job. Keep in mind that while a standard higher technical institute provides 1,200 hours of external classroom and only 900 hours, which is actually a long internship, here instead our students do 1,200 hours of classroom, which is in the company itself, but they also do 4,000 hours in the department. They work with 2 company tutors. Among other things, one of the interesting aspects is that most of the professors, in addition to the super expert ones from the universities of Brescia and Bergamo, are professors who come directly from work in the company. Many of these professors go to teach. They go teach lessons directly in the departments. So there is an idea that it is not a bit the limit of the whole Italian school, which basically keeps work at a distance. First you study, then you work. Instead here there is the reversal of the process. From work itself, then comes the training. Of course, this means not simply acquiring practical skills. I can do this, I can do that, but also acquiring awareness of scientific procedural processes. And I would say this is a success of course.
Yes, of course.
This is the success of this course.
Saverio Gaboardi, can you tell us what is brewing in the Lombardy cluster of mobility? I looked at your site, and you have a good newsletter that explains a bit of what's happening. What are you working on?
Do I have to speak about training?
I was very curious to know.
I wanted to say something about training and participation. There is a desire to participate. When many years ago listing the industrial conflict of the years up to 80s. I remember that in Foggia we organized a meeting to talk about equality, energy problems in Foggia Iveco.
Yes.
We invited the entire first shift. There were 600 of them. 616 showed up. Just the desire to know, to be involved, to give meaning to the work. Father Marcolini said it here in Brescia, you have to give the meaning to the work of the people who work with us, even the humblest. I remember the suggestion he gave us, put the customer's name on the tag. At least know that I'm working on something that will go to Yugoslavia. The problem of making sense and people participate, except for a few exceptions of people who that Saturday morning have to go fishing. There's a desire to participate. We need to find these soft skills in a system that is a non-conflictive, non-prejudiced, conflictive. And we are at this moment, things are changing. What does the cluster do? The cluster was formed together with 8 other clusters, an important participation of Lombardy, to choose 9 strategic sectors of Lombardy, with the task of, on one hand, develop the business, the opportunity for connections for large global companies, and on the other, the technological development and therefore innovation. So our central task is to innovate, and the automotive sector is our main element. In this sense, we can also make use of regional, national, and European tenders, which can finance up to 50% of innovation costs. So if I have to say what the cluster's most important product is, it's the innovative projects. The working groups are formed. At the beginning, you know the process. There is a design idea. There is a discussion. First, 5, 6, 10 companies gather around that sometimes are in competition with each other.
I find this very interesting.
This is the most delicate aspect. Organizing the table is the most delicate aspect. We speak of pre-competitiveness, but it is not easy. At that point, the project leaves the working group, and they go on their way. We have done many. The most important we did was with Brembo and Magnetti Marelli, now I no longer see Roberto, in the electric sector, to say that we are not against it. All of this knowledge is then reported in notebooks. We have the electric notebook, the material notebook. The notebook consists of 2 components. The first, from the most important scientific guidelines, the most probable ones. The second instead collects concrete examples from the companies. Well, in the electrical notebook at the moment, we already have 40 projects developed at a Lombardy level for components that continue to do their job but are making an effort. Here is the pairing I was talking about earlier. We get in with the technology. If you don't stop us from working with our work, instead, as it stands now, stop making the engine and make the electric one tomorrow morning, then the question is, you explain to me how to do it.
Davide Zucchetti, you at Randstad, speaking of the ability to aggregate collaboration, are making a reasoning that has also become concrete with Bosch. Can you explain this to us?
Yes, gladly. The project with Bosch has its roots in the distant 2015. It started as an aptitude orientation project. The program is called Training for the Future. It is precisely a program that Bosch and Randstad developed together, and which over the years has allowed us to meet thousands of students in all schools. And recently we have tried to review them, keeping their soul, so to speak, and which is based in fact on the value, then on the values of sporting culture, sporting experience, in an evidently indicative way. We have put it in relation to issues that appear to be very relevant today, also going back to what I said earlier, and then about the motivational levers of young people. Training for the Future is therefore a program that today is declined on the themes of diversity, of inclusion, which evidently within the sports world immediately recall the theme of visibility of Paralympic sport, but which, returning to what we said before, in particular on the role of companies, then in the identification of the person's talents, Therefore, how to say the qualities and abilities that identify each person, which inevitably make them different from the others, can lead to the development of increasingly personalized paths, and therefore not require the person to necessarily align themselves with standardized paths that are the same for everyone, but working more and more together with a single talent, with a single person, to put him in a position to best express his talent within the organization. In our opinion, this is, let's say, diversity, the part of recognition of talents and willingness to train them. Inclusion, the part instead of the ability to put the person to the best, to express his potential within the organization, and above all, to systemize the potential of individual people, making them work precisely in a team, as we said before.
I could see Stefano Guerra nodding. There is a big theme in Italy, that of building a career that can give them great satisfaction. They say it's not a country for young people. Perhaps it's a claim, but from this point of view, Streparava has posed the problem. It has become an attractive company. Who are you looking for? And last question, what level of turnover do you have? Because it is one of the great themes, especially as a big designation after COVID.
So I'll start from the last question. I would say that the level of turnover we have in Steparava is fortunately very low. On one hand, I say fortunately, others might think unfortunately, because in any case, the exchange of know-how among companies can also be enriching for the company. But we have a shift. We have a turnover which is above, is 1%, so shamefully low. We managed to contain the desire to escape that some people have with a series of actions that started precisely with our adoption of the in-office. And we say always that the young know how to run, but the old, or the experts, let me say, know the way. So these young people have a great desire and are often almost in a hurry to grow up, so they could make hasty career choices, and it's up to the company to give them the time, the opportunity to grow, and of course how to grow. We have chosen to share our vision, so that therefore our strategic project, so that the young person feels part of a whole, of a part of a company, and also sometimes assign the leadership of a new project to the emerging young person of an improvement team project, which allows, without upheaval of roles, without necessarily having to give great career advances to the young person, to remain and trust the company. Then I say another thing, fortunately, not everyone wants to become managing directors, so there are also people who are happy to work in a company that welcomes them and gives them the opportunity to live well and allows them to have them well-being, and not necessarily to have to deal or have to have an ahead of a career development that is necessarily astronomical or in greater sense.
Thank you for the four guests. Thanks to Giuseppe Colosio, Saverio Gabuardi, Stefano Guerra, and Davide Cuserchetti. Thank you.
We'll now go ahead and speak from this point of view of the new mobility needs and the guidelines that these needs must take. They must outline the track. Let's say they must build this track. We do it with Sergio Savaresi, who is the director of the Department of Electronics, Information and Bioengineering of the Politecnico University of Milan, Andrea Dell'Orto, Vice President of the homogeneous Dell'Orto Group. Hello. And Luca Marasco, who is a partner of the Eptalex law firm. Hello. Thanks for being with us. Luca, you can sit here near me, thank you, so I don't feel so lonely. Thank you. I would start with Andrea Dell'Orto as a tradition, as a name, as a brand. You're synonymous with the endothermic engine. When you say Dell'Orto, you think of carburetors. and yet you have reinvented yourself. Please explain how you did it, where you positioned yourself, and what difficulties you have had to overcome.
Thank you. Good morning to all of us. Thank you. This year, we are turning 90, and therefore, and as you rightly said, Dell'Orto is known throughout the world for its carburetors. However, over the years, we have undergone an important internal technological chain in our products, because from the beginning of 80s to the 90s, we passed the beginning of electronics and the electronics aviation components, therefore throttle body, but also electronic, therefore engine control unit, and recently we've passed to electric mobility. So in the last 3 years, we have developed an entire electric powertrain that goes to the application of the mobility of smart cities. Therefore, from the scooter to the electric scooter to the quadricycle. We did this by investing heavily in technology and skills, which paradoxically also accelerated when there was the famous crisis of 2008-2009, in which we changed our skin a little. We reinvested ourselves a little, both on the product but also at the level of internationalization with our presence in China. So we tried to keep our leadership on the system to some extent, because the carburetor is a system trying to achieve it lately with the transition and new technologies. Then electronic injection first, and electric powertrain and electric mobility.
Basically, you are telling us what Saverio Gobardi also said. That means managing transformation does not mean abandoning a business, but it means somehow superimposing business on business. It is a rather complex activity, I imagine.
Yes. You see, it does not mean ever abandoning, but for us, the role of endothermic engine will be decisive, despite what is said in the ecologic transition, thanks to biofuels, hydrazation, recycling of batteries. Therefore, certainly we will not abandon traditional technologies, but on the contrary, we want to invest in that direction, and therefore the difficulty exists because these may be, you have seen, to main different technologies at the process and development level of some technologies. If you think about the carburetors, we have been making them for 90 years, and therefore we certainly have different technologies. Therefore, we certainly need to bring a bit eclectic. However, our strategy is absolutely not the abandonment of technologies. Let's call them older for the new ones, but in the coexistence, new ones in the transition.
Seen from the Politecnico of Milano, you are a treasure trove of information, especially for us journalists. What are the new mobility needs, obviously listing them in the industrial sense?
The future of mobility is objectively very uncertain. I always say we know where we're going to end up. In the end, we're going to end up, can always be summarized in mobility that is largely shared. Therefore, a new model of mobility that only a small part is private cars. In other words, there are too many cars to make the system more efficient. We absolutely have to reduce the numbers. Fewer, much more sophisticated cars that work more and do less kilometers. This is the first axis. The second is that of electrification, obviously, with all the transitions. And the third is the one of autonomous. So these are the three axes. Let's look at 20 or 30 years. We will certainly find a mobility of this type. Let's say that today, at an industrial level, Andrea Dell'Orto has rightly underlined the industrial dilemma. There are all the phases of transitions, the coexistence in technologies between old and new technologies in a different context. Let's say, let's go forward, let's go backwards, let's change our mind. So let's say it will be 30 very interesting years from the point of view of mobility, because we expect a revolution. It will be 30 industrially complicated years because they will be full of uncertainties.
From the point of view of training, we talked about it earlier with our guests. How should the university system accompany this change? What do you think, Professor, are the buttons that need to be pressed in order to be in line with the needs of the future demand for hard and soft skills?
Yes. Let's say, from the Polytechnic, I always prefer to emphasize hard skills and then soft skills. Can be built, or in any case, it's not our primary objective. We have to build trained engineers. So, in reality, the answer is relatively simple. We have to prepare engineers at various levels, from the first level, master's degree or researchers. That is, people who are able to research and develop, therefore doctorate prepared in technological guidelines. So clearly today there is a lot of demand for our engineers who shifted their specializations towards these directions. So everything is digital, autonomous, driving, electric motors and so on. So the second thing is not to be influenced. This is another role that is important for us, that is not to be influenced in these stormy 30 years. It's clear there will be winners and losers. I always say that we must maintain our position as a third party and therefore make technical and objective assessments. Because it is clear that in a context where someone wins, someone loses. Being pulled by the jacket to polarize certain decisions is always behind the corner. And the third point also helps our policy makers who are experiencing and will experience difficult moments because there are so many difficult decisions to take, to support them with objective technical assessment. So I would say that these things, the first is trivial, to build technically capable, but we do not limit ourselves to this. We would like to be an active support.
Advocate. What Professor Savaresi said, I think it is one of the points less talked about today, but perhaps it is more important. Fewer cars, more connected to a smart city system. We can call it simply by trivializing perhaps the enormous complexity of implications that these cause. I think all of this includes a review of the regulatory environment.
Yes, okay. I very much agree with what the other speakers said in the wake of what has been said. Change is the first cultural, then economic, and then juridical, because we know that the law somewhat follows what it is, what happens. In this context, we are well aware that the whole issue of transport and smart mobility is included within a broader theme than the Fit for 55 climate and energy packet. We precisely aim to achieve the objectives of the Green Deal for a carbon neutral in 2050. We know this. However, here is more important regulations in terms of transport that has been passed from starting 1st of January 35. Hybrid, diesel or petrol vehicles can no longer be placed on the market. So in my opinion, there are some critical issues upstream. Anyway, because there is a war between Russia and Ukraine, it simply laid bare what is missing. But that is, in my opinion, the absence of a clear and stable program policy towards electricity, or in any case towards technology. The IPSI data says worrying things, in my opinion, in the sense that in Europe, investment in technology, which clearly also supports smart cities and electric mobility, are about a tenth of those in the United States and those in China. In addition, there are some critical issues related to taxation. In my opinion, I also see good eye on the issue of tax relief, but also on the principle of the polluter pays. It could be disincentive for those who have a vehicle that pollutes a lot of to pay more taxes, and an incentive for those who have a green vehicle to pay less. This is the first critical issue. However, all of this requires investment in technology because of the smart city. It is still a concept, a little bit like a metaverse, still to be defined. But let's say the smart city is nothing more than a city equipped with infrastructures, with sensors, or with details of detection or elevation sectors that can collect a large amount of data. And here comes the whole theme, also the technology points that engineers deal with, understanding how to collect the data, because not all data is good data.
Certainly, like how to transform white noise into value and then defend it even from those who want to steal this value.
I give a practical example that has already been tested, just to understand. I think in a smart city in the UK, if the vehicle is connected to the traffic light sensors, etc., to ensure company that insures the vehicle, which can increase or decrease the insurance premium based on driving behavior. For example, everything is more efficient.
From this point of view, we said it before, that Europe has a bit of this legislative bulimia. It has taken on the role of the great censor from an international and global point of view among economies that are very often, especially the United States, somehow they push themselves beyond the limit of the country. I remember in unsuspecting times before COVID, I was invited by a Finnish startup in Finland to try one of the first vehicles without a driver, meaning a self-driving car, plus public transport was small buses, which then were then supposed to start providing, let's say, a service between the school and the subway. Why Finland? Because exclusively in Finland there was a legislatively vulnerability that allowed experimentation. This would not never happen in the United States. That is, when we say this approach, so the term maybe is wrong. I'm a humanist. I'm not a technician. If it guarantees, does it slow down innovation?
Excellent point in that the sense that I very much agree, because in my opinion, it is primarily a cultural theme. For example, in your states, there's from the bottom approach, while in Europe we have a top-down approach to the same country. But above all, this can suffocate innovation, because it is clear that there can be and must always be failures. The deadline passes before reaching important objectives. The risks are always there. If those risks are not taken, in my opinion, you cannot be competitive in a market that we've been saying for many years, but today is increasingly globalized. We see companies at a certain point say, oh, well, I'm going to open in the United States because it's much simpler. I find it more funding and investment more, let's do that. Yes, I fully agree at this point, but I do not think its attitude will change. For example, I quote that our act on artificial intelligence is about to enter into force, in my opinion. It's also well written that, in the sense, it's an excellent starting point for regulation of risk-based artificial intelligence system, and therefore the more they use algorithm systems, the more impact on fundamental rights of the person, the more they have complication. Of course, it's also true that I've placed myself in the perspective I find myself, however, I have this extra cost in addition.
Professor Savaresi, I know that now you have an engagement, so I'd like to steal a few more minutes from you if you're still online. I hope so.
Yes, I'm here, thanks. Sorry, I cannot remain longer.
I'm just going to steal a minute and a half. I wanted to ask you, the relationship we talked about before between the university and the ITS, the technical schools, we often said in the newspapers too, we've read it, I also wrote it myself, that there is between ITS and universities, above all engineering, there is a war. Have we arrived at an armed peace in which somehow who does what was well defined and who has defined what roles?
For us, there is a very natural passage between the students and the ITS and our university. So let's say I don't see any particular criticality, at least at least from my point of view and from the point of view of the Polytechnic on this issue. There are different things, there are things complementary, and therefore it is right that they should be well coordinated.
And sorry, just the last question. The one that was to recover what Luca Maresco said, the fact that there are so many standards hinders a little bit the ability to innovate, perhaps to create patents and so on. I ask you because you are somehow one of the universities that has always engaged more with venture capture to try to create this type of risk culture.
Yes, I would like to draw your attention, an interesting observation from before. I come from a very recent experience, indeed, which we are competing in these days, which has to do with our Miglia. We have launched a project, we have called it the Miglia Autonomous Drive, in which we are launching the longest trail in the world. Therefore, a journey along the Miglia of the autonomous car. It will be a beautiful Maserati Cielo, and we are asking for the authorization from the ministry. Obviously, I discovered that in theory, it's possible to do experiment with autonomous cars in Italy, but it's very difficult. There is this decree, it's called the Ministerial Decree 70, issued 5 years ago. There was only one authorization granted on a very small stretch of road, and we should be the second in history. We've already had a pre-authorization. What am I trying to say? I mean, if you want to carry forward technological development, you need to balance risk opportunity well. That is, in my opinion, we're going in a direction in which risk is increasingly emphasized while weighing the opportunity is bad instead. This is an example. Autonomous car technology will be enormously important. There are countries that are investing a lot and are authorizing trials, and being left behind is very serious damage. And therefore, in my opinion, this is very, very delicate issue of balancing risk opportunity. Now we would like to discuss it again with the ministry, which has said it's willing to see this regulation to facilitate this experiment. If we know we can balance risk opportunity well, let's go ahead. If we can overemphasize only the risk aspect, everything stops, because zero risk does nothing. Nothing is done. Entrepreneurs know this very well, and we have to in the industry, and we have today, because 10, 20, 50 to 90 years ago, there were entrepreneurs who took even big risks, and we get to where we are. If we turn off risk, we turn off everything.
Thank you, Professor Savaresi. Andrea Dell'Orto, do you agree with what the professor of the Politecnico says?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that today we also need to create a system. And when I say create a system, I mean not only companies, but also the government and the university, in order to be able to address the most critical issues. As professors Gregovaresi today, perhaps to ground as development or development address as autonomous driving. I think that we have some extraordinary corporate realities in the sectors, and therefore it would also take an extra effort to dare and perhaps go and invest in a targeted and systematic way in these new technologies, because otherwise the risk that you will then suffer and little other countries then maybe do it better. So from our part, I think like entrepreneurs, we have to do our part, but I think that certainly as mentioned, we're trying to do it in terms of product development strategy. But in my opinion, the extra step is to be able to do it together in a systematic way.
Thank you, Vice President of the Dell'Orto Group. Thank you for being with us. I would close with Luca Marasco. What kind of relationship do you have today as a studio, as a law firm with companies? Can you explain it to us? Because very often we think of the law firm and the relationship between a company and a law firm only when there are problems. Actually, I don't think it works exactly like this, especially in the management of perhaps patenting, of management, let's say, of new ideas, of the management of these new ideas. As we said, in an environment that is certainly rigid, it is a bit rigid.
Yes, of course. This is something that is usually said, but I love to repeat it. You should go to the lawyer sooner rather than later, before the problem starts. Because then the damage is done. But jokes aside, and it's not always a joke, the relationship is more of a consultancy, so that an entrepreneur's idea is in any case something new, and it's to be developed and channeled in the right track by taking minimized calculated risks and saying this can bring a risk, but we can take it the right way, which goes from data management, because it's not only GDPR, but it's also portability, looking at so on. Also security, cyber security, precisely artificial intelligence. There are sometimes even issues of golden power, which are
The fact that a
legislated.
company can somehow, does not have the majority, can however decide for the entire board of directors.
Taking control in certain sectors, in one of the sectors such as transportation, so they can slow down and sometimes even block a business. So our relationship is one of cooperation, because there is a lot of exchange of ideas. We're also looking for slightly innovative solutions from a legal point of view, because we need to be a bit inventive to assist them.
The world of jurisprudence is also changing from this point of view.
Yes, definitely. I think it's normal. The new younger judges and new younger lawyers, much more ideas. Then, as I say, law is a science that is inexact. It's a science in the sense that it is clearly approached with a
The
scientific
biggest
method.
challenge of mobility from a regularity point of view will be autonomous driving, I imagine.
Yes, definitely, because here, in my opinion, there is an upstream theme in the sense that autonomous driving involves a problem whereas as the algorithm systems of the programs were deterministic, they had a certain input. If it is the AL systems, they have a certain input. There can be more options, and softwares can process and be problematic. The question then is ultimately who makes the choice? Because this is a big question that comes even before the jurisprudence, in my opinion. This is the big challenge and has to be decided beforehand. Therefore, this is a big challenge, and as we say, it has to
Therefore,
be
the
decided.
legislator must at some point define the rules of the game.
In my opinion, yes. In my opinion, it has to be from the bottom, us, all those who take part in the supply chain in various ways, and a certain drive to make the most weighted decisions possible.
Thanks to Luca Marasco, partner of the Patelex firm. Thanks for being with us. Have a nice day.
We close this day with the last session, which we wanted to entitle The Challenge of Technological Neutrality. And we talk about products and not about processes, but about products with Federico Brivio, who is the direct sales and customer product manager of Bosch. Good morning, and thank you for being with us. Thank you. Thanks. You should have a microphone on your chair. Paride Salieri, who is the president of OMB Salieri Group. Good morning, Dr. Salieri. Thank you for being with us. And in connection, we should have the Councillor for Economic Development of Lombardia, Guido Guidesi. I hope you are here. Yes, I can see him. Good morning, Councillor. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks.
Good morning.
And Benjamin Coates, who is part of P1 Fuels. And good morning. Nice to meet you. Benjamin, thanks a lot for being here. So, we have already dealt with the theme before, and that is, in some way, assuming change has now become the rule. We must try to somehow understand how to make the energy salad work, because it's a big salad, the British say. Is energy salad. We are talking not in a realistic way to think of a solution. single. I asked Federico Brivio of Bosch, a very key player in the extremely complicated supply chain, what is your vision and where are you working and what are you doing in this time?
Hello, first of all, many thanks. It is an honor to be here with you today, precisely to talk about this very complex issue that at Bosch we are working hard to structure. As we like to say, we're a powertrain neutral, meaning we try to follow, and we also have the lungs to follow many technologies to be able to cover energy balancing around the world. Because today we are in Brescia, which I did not know. It's a beautiful city, but the world is not only Brescia, it's not only Italy. One must be able to cover all the technologies. Today I take the liberty of speaking more in the area of hydrogen powertrains, which in our opinion is a very interesting aspect for tackling this change and balancing technologies. I humbly, as an engineer, believe it is essential to give political guidelines to companies, to engineers, however, also leave space for people to work and to bring their skills and abilities in developing technologies. One of these is precisely the fuel cell. It is the hydrogen fuel cell, which I say is magical for me. It manages to unite the hydrogen to oxygen. It produces water vapor, electrical energy. It's wonderful. So when we talk about fuel cells, we also have an electric base vehicle, and we are now developing this hydrogen cell battery, which in our opinion allows for applications of over 400 kilometers, and it's very interesting. Why? Because I often travel between Stuttgart and Milan. If you come to Germany with an electric car, maybe you go 200 an hour, you don't get to Milan, and you have to stop maybe an hour, even with the super rapid charge for an hour there to have a coffee. Instead, hydrogen allows, like methane, other fuels, to charge the vehicle in 3-5 minutes and to have no major limitations to go at 100 per hour on the highway behind a truck to try to get to the charging station. It manages to use this technology to have a higher range. So hydrogen also has the beauty of being really lighter than a battery. Can you imagine? We're working today mainly for trucks. We already predict 30% in 2035, 30% because that's crazy. Let's see. In 2035, 30% of hydrogen trucks, because today we have a strategic partner in Nikola, who is already on the road today with a vehicle in the Stralis class, an electric Stralis Iveco, where the batteries weigh, I don't have the exact figure, but 4 or 5 tons, and that's all load that you cannot have on the vehicle. And we see the advantage, especially for ranges of 600 to 1,000 kilometers of range, of doing this with hydrogen. This is why we're investing heavily in this technology. But as I said, we are not extremists. We invest in all types of technologies. Hydrogen is a piece that can help in this energy transition, but it's not a battle of religion, if I may say.
Yeah, here is a piece that also helps the development of a new district of new skills. Paride Salieri leads a Brescian-based company that has somehow been able to carve out a slice of the market in this, let's say, new emerging market. Is this true?
That's right. But I'd like to make a preliminary observation. The world of cars is changing. It's changing intensely. It is as if we were inside a storm. When we return inside the storm, there are fears. Yes, there are fears. Yes, we do not know well what will be the outcome of and how we must get out of the storm. The fears that we have heard about this morning recall for fears we think of great unemployment. I really don't think so. I don't think there will be any kind of concern as a result of these great changes in the car sector. I totally agree with the affirmation of the colleague of the Bosch director, with whom we commonly, in short, we have been developing a broad area of collaboration that will last for 7, 8 years, I hope, even more. Here I agree with what I was saying with the Bosch, the executive of Bosch, in saying that it is not a question of finding in hydrogen a sector in which I believe a global way out of the storm. No, it could be one of the ways out, because, why do I say because? And this is where the role of the industrialists comes in, of the interpreters, of the entrepreneurs comes in. I do not agree with the attitude, this seems clear, that of defending traditional technologies at all costs. There is the change. As an industrialist, I believe that it is a part of our duty as innovators to seize the opportunities, each one for his own competence, for his ability, or in reading what is moving within these billows, is to find a way out, certainly in 10 and 15 years, which are not few. This morning everyone is reiterating a fast change is required. Where is it fast? We have 15 years to go. We probably, with the new European Commission that will be elected in a year, there will be a wider attention to the requests to lengthen the life of the internal combustion engine. And the times, and these are the times that we have. We are industrialists. We are not a lot of unwary people who go after what is today. We must look at tomorrow. Here is this is my vision of innovation in my way. Innovation, just a few words about innovation. Many of my colleagues involved in the automotive sector are already innovating. It is obvious, otherwise they would not be on the market. It is the continuous innovation that derives from reading what the purchasing manager of your customer is obvious that if you go in that direction, you have to innovate. You have to listen, you have to hear the voice of the customer to understand. Perfect. I'm talking about discontinuous innovation. Discontinuous innovation opens up large spaces for risk. Of course, however, this is where our role as entrepreneurs counts. At least that's how I understand the function of small, medium Italian entrepreneurs from Brescia.
Thank you, Paride Saleri. Then we go back and also want to know a little more about your technology. Councillor Guido Guidesi, in short, this morning we told a good piece of talk about this dialectic. It's an important dialectic because there are various stakeholders. There are those who are more, let's say, linked to disruption. We have seen now with Paride Saleri. There's also those instead who tries to defend some traditional foundations of our industrial approach. The initial speech of President Confindustria Brescia was centered precisely on the value of the request for technological neutrality, precisely to somehow guarantee a future for processes and productions that are in some way linked to tradition. Can we put together these two positions which are dialectical but can also find a synthesis or not?
Hello everyone, thank you. I must say that we are trying, we have been trying for 2 years, and we are not afraid of changes. We are the Lombardy region. We want to be modestly protagonists of influencing changes, and to do this rightly, as we said before, we need innovation. But innovation has a fundamental principle on which to work, which lies in freedom of action. And this is why we do not say no to change. We are not involved in the we are involved in the goal of zero impact mobility. We ask for full technological neutrality so that we can use all our innovative capacity, which then later lies in the fabric that we are largely made up of. The ingenuity of the genius of the many Lombard entrepreneurs, also in the automotive sector, and the quality of their workers, and also from the research chain. And this is essentially what we ask for by contesting the fact that an achievement of an objective can envisage a single road. Here, that only road would definitely jeopardize the capacity for innovation, so ahead of the times for which the competitive victory of the Lombardy region supply chains within international competition that makes the quality of innovation ahead of its time. The weapon on which international competition has always been won, for which we say involved in an objective which is an environmental objective, involved in the change in which we once again want to be protagonists, full technological neutrality so that we can use all our added values from which the entirety of the solutions as well, and certainly including biofuel.
Councillor, today to bring our idea of change to Europe, alliances are needed. Lombardy, from this point of view, has managed to build bridges and somehow privileged communication channels with some regional partners who have the same problems as us to solve.
I have to say yes, mainly with the regions, including evidently all the 10 regions that have embraced our manifesto of sustainable mobility by asking for full technological neutrality, which both the supply chain of components and as regards, unfortunately, a few factories, and as regards other European regions which have the theme of the component supply chain, which is no small matter, that in full technological neutrality they would become absolutely involved in the transition, in the changes, and in everything that concerns them. In a further regulation for which a limitation also of the ability to develop innovation evidently runs the risk of being jeopardized. So there is an open discussion between the European regions that enjoy an automotive supply chain, whether it is a component supply chain or a supply chain where they see the manufacturers established in some territories. I will not hide from you that evidently those like us who have a strong component supply chain within the automotive sector are more inclined and much more involved, much more committed to asking for that technological neutrality, which, as far as we are concerned, would also see full from the point of innovation.
Thank you. I'm asking you to stay with us a few more minutes more. But first I wanted to pass the word to Benjamin Kate, partner of P1 Fuels, because we talked about alternatives and we spoke about technological alternatives, especially to electricity. Well, this company produces one of these, and it is an alternative that is not an experiment. It's a reality, because P1 Fuels does nothing but deliberate to guarantee the cars that will run in the Miglia the possibility of racing with enormously licensing CO2, lowering the CO2, and in any case we can see that the polluting factors, thanks to the invention, thanks to what we can call e-fuel. And I wanted to ask to Kate if he can tell us the genesis of these ideas and what we are talking about.
We, P1 Fuels, we produce carbon neutral fuel. And carbon neutral fuel, there are two streams to produce the same product. One stream is the pure e-fuel, where we take carbon out of the atmosphere. We are, for example, already the suppliers of the World Rally Championship exclusively. We are the suppliers of the World Karting Championship. We are working together with the leading automobile industry in Japan, in Europe, also in Italy. We had the great honor to fuel Sebastian Vettel last year during the Grand Prix of Silverstone with his Nigel Mansell Red 5. We will provide him with fuel on the Festival of Speed. And of course, we also will deliver our fuels during the Miglia this year. So it is perfectly applicable for old-timers, so they can drive carbon neutral the Miglia without technical changes.
Benjamin, do you think that this kind of fuel will be one of the possibility of substitution of the traditional fuels? And what market, what the wild market?
It's very easy. So we produce carbon neutral fuel that is EN228 and 100% non-fossil. So it has the same normation as fossil fuel, but we can just replace fossil fuel. So without technical changes at the petrol station, without technical changes to the car, the fuel is perfect as a drop-in fuel to every car. Is to replace all the fossil fuel existing to non-fossil fuel that is carbon neutral. So it will be applicable for the automobile industry, it will be applicable for historic vehicles, and it will be applicable for every car that is on the road today.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Grazie mille, grazie.
Pari dei Saleri, torniamo un po' alla tecnologia.
Pari dei Saleri. Let's go back to the technology that you're developing. Can you explain in a simple way, make us understand what's happening, or to those who are not of the sector? The affirmation of hydrogen technology presupposes education not only of infrastructures, but also of a new supply chain. And it is here that I see spaces for companies like ours, traditional mechanical companies. I come from Lumezzane, and we are bearers of a profound knowledge of works. Well, for the affirmation of hydrogen technology, it is necessary, in addition to the fuel cell, which is a challenge and a challenging production, which is far from the resources of small or medium-sized companies. And in fact, the gentlemen from Bosch and others of that level are facing this. Around the fuel cell, there is a whole series of equipment. I don't mean valves, because it seems to diminish the intrinsic value of all that is necessary to store hydrogen. Hydrogen is the lightest element in the universe. It escapes from everywhere, and in the gaseous state, it must be stored at 1,000 bars. 1,000 bars are an extraordinary light pressure, high pressure. Not only must it be stored, but it must be placed on the car. Therefore, the combination of technological challenges like high pressure, hydrogen, which has a whole series of problems, and the application on cars where there will be people, requires a very demanding validation. And we at OMB have been working on it for 10 years, supported by German subjects who also already glimpsed in hydrogen 10 years ago, as our friend Bosch, excuse me, your name, Federico, as Federico was saying, is certainly one of the ways out for the ecological transition. It will not be the only one. Here is the confusion of the scenario. Cars will come. Cars will come, and Italy said there will be self-driving cars. Self-driving cars will extraordinarily lower the use and purchase of cars. Today, 100 million are produced a year. When there will be self-driving cars, 1 million will be enough, because it will be enough. It will be enough to have another one which will travel the continents with an app, we call it, and it will be like a taxi without a driver. And this will allow families not to have a car. But this is another scenario. Going back to hydrogen technology, there is a storage problem.
a problem that we solved. We solved because we have worked for 10 years using skills, resources, hard skills, engineers who almost come from the University of Brescia, and yet there are other challenges. We need to optimize the efficiency of the fuel cell. The fuel cell produces steam or water. It reduces the efficiency of the most fuel cell. So it is necessary, in short, the space to relaunch supply chains that apparently seem destined to run out is in hydrogen, possibly also in other sectors.
Federico Brivio, you mentioned in your pipeline, as you said so before, in your not on your project, and I think there is the need to govern change as widely as possible. Can you tell us what you're actually working on?
So just a little premise, just like Seri said, we're very happy at Bosch to be able to work with Italian excellence in this case, precisely on hydrogen in the storage on a vehicle at 700 bars, and then injecting it into the engine. It is not a trivial thing, really. OMAB is a lead in this area, and at Bosch, it is an opportunity to be able to draw on these skills, not always reinventing the wheel from scratch.
It's more, if you forgive me, it's like a model of innovation.
Yes, yes.
You found somebody who already...
Yes, because at Bosch, as we said earlier, commenting a bit, we are 420,000 people at Bosch. It's enormous. We have a gigantic responsibility, let's say, towards all of our collaborators.
500,000 people.
I mean, it's a city. You have to have elections to go to the bathroom. It's huge. And for this, we have to do a bit of everything. We can't afford to put all our eggs in one basket. As we say, we innovate the little things organically. We earn money by improving the processes in micron. But then we must also have the vision of working with very innovative companies, where perhaps producing, innovating internally in Bosch would have cost much more. It would have taken us much longer. We have found a forward-looking company that has already been investing in this area for 10 years. Why not collaborate?
There's space in the supply chain.
And another note, just the other day, we were talking about it at Bosch, we cannot hire people, meaning in Lombardy, there's 4% of unemployment, not even in Silicon Valley. Therefore, we have the problem that we are now asking, and if someone answers, we have to contact him, please come. The problem, as Saleri said, is not, above all, for example, we have production realities in the south of Italy. There it's 16%. But in short, moving a few hours by car, one arrives in an area where working is not a problem. The plans we make with Randstad always need a little training for this future. It's not all papaya with sugar. One must also commit oneself and confront the competition. Back to the question. The question was technologies. I'll say just one. We at Bosch are investing in this electrolyzer to be able to produce green hydrogen, and we can also inject this hydrogen into combustion engines. So we're working with premium companies because the engine is hydrogen. It spreads 5 times faster than petrol. So one can imagine it can also make beautiful engines with an emission of 1 or 2 grams every 100 kilometers instead of 70.
Very competitive.
In these 2 grams, 1 gram entering from Milan is counted because it is also counted from the CO2 that enters the combustion engine. So these are technologies that, as I said before, we're able to invest in so many technologies because we have 420,000 employees. We cannot afford to make mistakes at 100% mistakes. We have to balance what are the investments.
Council Guidesi, it seems that what Brivio said is also comforting from a certain point of view, because we are, in any case, an area that knows how to respond in terms of technology and skills in the challenge of multinationals. But on the other hand, our other guest said today there is a big problem finding suitable skills. Among other things, you have developed the Gold Program in a rather positive way. We've spoken about it in other forums, but this great theme remains in a way to try and eliminate this mismatch that perhaps still exists, but perhaps still exists, and to give some oxygen to the companies.
The mismatch, we totally compensate for it when the public education chain, apart, let's say, those walls, pulls down those walls towards the world of work, exactly as it has done, and as ITS has been done for a long time. The ITS that directly match job offer requests, and we have peaks of permanent hiring that even reach levels of 92, 93%, depending on some institutes. So where companies influence, guide, and sometimes even play a leading role in the training of pupils, of students, evidently that matching intersects. Job applications and offers intersect in a substantially automatic way. And allow me to say that with respect to the interventions that have been placed in this debate, I perfectly support the line of technological neutrality, because all the representations, all the programs which are presented, extremely innovative, take note of the fact that this technological neutrality is needed in the automotive world. What we initially contested and will continue to do, so until there is a full technological neutrality, is exactly the only way forward, which had been aimed at the electric functionality, to the decrease of cars produced, but evidently that, yes, single road, that single road would have jeopardized not only some jobs due to the abandonment of the internal combustion engine, but also for a production that would have moved where there are really the main raw materials for making batteries. So it's economically suicidal. I say it in all respects. We cannot afford this. Compared to all the know-how we have at our disposal, and which is perfectly represented at its best, we cannot afford that there be a single road leading to the production of many or few cars that are headed by China. And we cannot afford a solution that has a univocal path by completely homologating the individual innovation capacities, therefore limiting them further. This is what we contest. But faced with all that is being proposed in this debate, we obviously think we are right, and that in the future there may be mobility with hydrogen, electric mobility, mobility with synthetic fuels, mobility with biofuels, because this is the great opportunity. If we are left with full technological neutrality, then we will generate new production chains, new skills, new opportunities, job opportunities. This is a real challenge. This is the real challenge. This is what we ask, that we be left with full freedom of action to achieve the objectives from an environmental point of view, by exploiting all the capacities that are represented here, that represent Lombardy at its best, and giving the possibility to every single European citizen to be able to afford a car, a not insignificant issue. All European citizens must have freedom of choice and the ability to afford a car.
Thanks to Guido Guidesi, Council for Economic Development of the Lombardy region, to Benjamin Coit, partner of P1 Fuels, to Federico Brivio, Director Sales and Customer Product Manager of Bosch, and to Padre Saleri, President of OMB Saleri. Thank you so much for being with us.
We have arrived at the end, almost at the end of the fifth edition of this Green Talk. I know that Angelo Sticchi Damiani, who is the president of ACI Italia, should be online for a greeting. In any way, I would like to invite the CEO of Miglia, Alberto Piantoni, onto the stage. President,
good morning. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us today. I know you wanted to send your greetings for the fifth edition of this Green Talk.
Yes, I really wanted to because I also participated in other years. I think it's a wonderful initiative, and I have to thank President Bonomi for the sensitivity he has always shown on these issues. We know that we are all committed to the energy transition right now in order to be able to reduce the damage of the environment from car circulation. This is an important issue because, above all, I believe that what has happened in the last few days is truly a warning to everyone that there can be no distraction on this topic. So we are ready. We are absolutely, we have absolutely done what we could have done and would like to have done more. However, some issues seem to me to be important to underline. A great effort is now being made from an economic point of view to provide Italy with a network of recharging stations so that electric mobility is no longer the prerogative of the lucky few who live in large cities. Even if in this way we impoverish the use of the electric car, which essentially becomes a city car. So we appreciate all of this, in being done to try to make the electric car, which is certainly one of the best solutions for zero emissions, in use, because not everyone can afford one for the city and another for going out of town. But at the same time, we cannot fail to underline a problem that is probably only Italian, but is a very serious topic. We have an old, very old vehicle fleet. We have reached an average of around 12 years old, and above all, we have around 20 million highly polluting engines. These cars won't disappear with magic wand. What is being done now is very important to give incentives to buy new cars, hybrid cars, electric cars. It is very important, but unfortunately, this only produces effects on the wealthier classes, and therefore we have seen that the effects are there, but we have also seen that in April there was a 51% reduction in electric cars sold compared to March 2023. The other point that worries us is that in the first 4 months of 2023, there was a very positive trend, plus 20%, plus 6% of used cars and new cars, but there was less, minus 12% of radiation. This means that new cars are placed on the market, and this is fantastic, but there's no replacement. And above all, there's no scrapping of very polluting and unsafe cars. That is, in substance, the essence there is in Italy. Italy is divided in half: those who can afford the use of buying new cars, hybrid electric cars, and those who cannot, and therefore there is a problem of social exclusions. There is a problem of the right to mobility. Above all, what is happening is probably also due to the limitations that exist in port and cities, which are correct and very correct limitations to reduce pollution in certain cities for fine particles, but at the same time discourage the purchase of second-hand, fresh, however less polluting cars. We will never be able to get out of the situation except gradually. It is absolutely impossible to imagine that someone who has a Euro 0 car can buy a new one, an electric or hybrid one, because that person obviously doesn't have the resources. However, we must maybe encouraged by contributions, or obviously doesn't have the resources. The only possibility is to do this gradually. These are our suggestions. The important thing is that these 20 million euro cars, Euro 0, 1, 2, 3, scrapping and purchasing Euro 5, an incentive, Euro 6, or not. Also, the Euro 4 can be changed subsequently, but with graduality. And we are out of the economic possibility of Italian families. And another thing is to cancel, or in any case, reduce the provincial transcription tax, because it's clear that by purchasing a used car worth 1,000, 2,000, 2,500 cars, there's the IPT tax of 300, 400 euros, which, as you know, is not linked to the age of the car, but it's linked to the cylinder capacity and the power. It is clear and becomes daunting. Last but not least, since we are at the Miglia, since we are at the most important, beautiful historic car event, we must also stop continuing to create this confusion between historic cars and old cars, and above all encourage the use of old cars by allowing to these cars only because they have turned 20, but without any type of selection. For example, all cars, vans that are 20 years old, have seen on the RSI list, or the CRS is issued and described on the registration certificate, which is really daunting. We cannot encourage the purchase of new cars, hybrid cars, and electric cars, and then encourage the use of old cars when we should be scrapped. We need an upstream selection. We can courageously do 40 other subjects, amenable safeguard list. We can modify it. We can add models or remove them for principles. Some become, others become 30, 40, 50, depending on the number of specimens produced. So let's avoid encouragement, the use of these old cars, because they pollute and they're also bad for the market. Thank you, Angelo Sticchi Damiani, President of ACI ACI Italia, for being with us. Alberto, thank you. Thank you for being with us in this Green Talk. Alberto Piantoni, let's try to make quick but accurate reports.
Let's try, at least what I understand, not being an automotive expert, but in short, I think I'm an attentive citizen. For the first thing that is perhaps is interesting is that it is a true storm that has arisen, but perhaps it is not the case to look for a safe place, but trying to sail. I think this is the attitude of the industries in general, because sailing with audacity, with daring, is certainly a Miglia value. This means that a little bit like an example that of Bosch. Bosch is the most striking. One must say, exploit and work by finding the right partners on all technologies. This is evident because I believe that focusing just on one road is harmful. There is a more general theme, which is that of a challenge that Europe must rightly ask itself towards the other continents. And it may be that it is only a dream, that there is a global sharing of a way of development. I think this is impossible, that China rightly, with its organization, goes on its own road, and the United States goes in their direction, and it is right that Europe finds its own. I believe that Europe's point of view, however, perhaps more than others, is man. And therefore this having a man as the central point can give us a way of thinking, which certainly means pushing our ability to the maximum to take them into account, to take into account the technologies that we apply, and therefore automotive experimentation on an endothermic engine, in my opinion, is important because, in fact, it's generated and continues to generate innovation, and that is one road. Biofuels are another way to create or decrease Italy's energy dependence anyway with the new technologies, but also solar. It is an obligation that we must carry on, and is a European challenge.
Well, in these 5 years, it seems to me, having lived them almost completely, it seems to me that, however, there is also a very positive character in the last few talks, especially in this one. That is to say, at the beginning we were afraid because there was also great concern to try to salvage what was able to be saved. Today it seems that there's great openness instead, and empathy, also the ability to be constructive.
Yes, yes. The theme of the web, the network, everything we said, and the importance of the supply chain made in Italy. This has come out. The made in Italy has come out. If you allow me, this is an excursion that this is something I like. A lot of micro innovation came out from the supply chain, the famous printers, the famous producers, the small mechanical parts, etc. If we look at it in a big sense, that's what we are capable of doing. I think that within Europe, Italy has these two things which would seem contradictory, but in reality they are not. There is a bit of our humanistic culture, so man at the center, with the ability to adapt. So we are
traditionalists as well as...
We need to express this in this direction. What I see, and I'm very sorry, is the inability. I'm now making a comparison. It seems to me, and I was constantly thinking about the human body as long as we're talking, which in reality is a network in which there's a heart that says, oh dear, things are not going well, we have to stop. The eye that says, all the various muscles must move. We have to walk, we have to run, we have to work, and our brain which is the political part. The comparison is it's not a good kind of comparison, but the body must continue. There is no lobbying action, but a positive one, not a negative one, not a defense. There is no lobbying action in our Italian thought. Yeah, I think there is a lot to be done, and since that I believe that the industry must take this thing in one hand.
It must raise its voice.
And maybe it is raising the voice. I think training is crucial because, as we see it every day, children every day want to work. The kids want to work, but they also want to earn. They want to be engaged in projects that show them a future. Now, in my opinion, our ability to look far ahead, to look to the future, will be the necessary function to build our future. There is no other thing to do. Someone said that it is in today that there are the seeds of the future, and it must be like this. Therefore, this distant gaze is necessary to change things. And instead, we see it in the companies, OMV and others. I think that in the end, it's a battle that will be won. I'm positive by nature. However, as those drivers taught us many years ago, if I'm allowed to say, we need the ability to drive a car, and we need the daringness to drive at those speeds. So this is a bit of the teaching I think we need to relaunch with these tones.
Thank you, Alberto Piantoni, CEO of Miglia. Thanks to all our guests. We made it to the end, and so to see you next year. Thank you.